I could see this person killing that person because of this.
Welcome to Recotopia, a happy home for recommended movies, shows, and music from two people you can definitely trust. Trustability varies by region, no guarantees implied. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Atkinson and Jeremy Scott.
My God, what can we do? He has us by the hip.
Run like smoke and oakum.
We'll have to bend every sail.
Put up our pocket handkerchiefs if we have to. We must survive this day.
Hello, everybody. How's everything going today?
Hello!
This is Recotopia episode 52. And today we'll be doing Master and Commander Far Side of the World. Once again, welcoming in people who are watching us on a Tuesday on Twitch and YouTube. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming out and chatting while we talk. You are hearing me talk. How you doing today, Jeremy?
I'm doing outstanding, and how about you?
I am doing great. I can't wait to talk about this movie today. But do you have any small recommends for us today?
It's no big deal.
Itty bitty living space.
It's so small and light.
It's small, it's tiny, it's petite, it's wee.
I'm very excited about my smalls today. I had seen scenes, bits and pieces of this movie, but I'd never watched it from beginning to end. It's 2013's Lone Survivor with Mark Wahlberg, Taylor Kish, and then Emile Hirsch and Ben Foster, who were in Alpha Dog together. And this is Peter Berg directing. Peter Berg loves to do two things: to make movies with Mark Wahlberg and to make movies about real life events. Deepwater Horizon, whatever the name of the Boston bombing one is, Patriots Day or something.
Yes, Patriots Day, I think. Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of those two movies I just named. Peter Berg, of course, made Battleship, which I'm not a big fan of, but I think he's a capable filmmaker. He made Friday Night Lights. And Lone Survivor impressed me. I was pretty riveted. It's a true story of 4 Navy SEALs in Afghanistan who are scouting out a village where they think this guy is that they want to bomb. And while they're kind of camouflaged on the mountainside, some goat farmers come upon them. And instinctively, they draw guns. And then they have this huge debate about, well, what do we do? Because if we let them go, they're just going to go tell the Taliban down at the bottom of the mountain that there are American soldiers up here and we're dead. But we can't kill them. That's immoral. And they basically debate that for a while, decide to let them go. And one of them does indeed run down the mountain and tell the Taliban that there are 4 American soldiers up on top of the mountain. And the rest of the movie is them trying to survive. And the title suggests that they don't all make it.
Right.
And I would say it is brutal in that there are many scenes of them falling off parts of the mountain and landing on rocks. Many. There's one scene where the only option they have is to throw themselves off of a cliff and land on rocks. And the movie doesn't flinch about that stuff. Anyway, that's my recommend. I was pretty riveted. I'm not always the biggest fan of Peter Berg or Mark Wahlberg, but it is based on a true story, and that kind of made it extra compelling to me, and I enjoyed it. So there you go.
I don't think I've seen any of these Peter Berg, Mark Wahlberg movies. And it's weird. Like, I feel like I know what those movies are before I even watch them. And it is wrong of me to assume what those movies are without even seeing them, but none of them appealed to me in any way. And I don't know why that is. I mean, I feel like I've seen Deepwater Horizon, but I think it's just because there's so many of these movies. Yeah. But yeah, when this came out, I was like, oh, okay, Peter Berg, Mark Wahlberg. Okay, I don't want to really watch that. But if you like this one and you said that the other two didn't float your boat, maybe I'll give this one a look.
Yeah, I mean, it gave me vibes of. I mean, it's way better than that fucking Owen Wilson Rescue Me from Behind. Oh, Behind Enemy Lines is the name of that movie. I almost said it there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if people regard that movie very well, but when
Yeah.
it came out, I remember it got a decent reception. It was way better than that.
Mhm.
And I do see some chat, some negative Mark Wahlberg chat, and I want to tell you that is totally acceptable if you want to be that way. He has
Mhm.
done some horrible, horrible things. However, I used to also avoid his work and call him a nasty person until I learned that the chief person he had wronged as a teenager had forgiven him. And he has tried very hard to make amends for at least that act.
Mhm.
And if the man against whom the crime was committed is willing to move past that, then I decided I'm not going to be angry at it anymore. But that is not to say you can't be angry at him.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Exactly. Okay. So I'm late to the party on this one, but everybody was talking about this series and I decided to catch up on it, and it's the White Lotus.
Ooh.
And so I did not I'm glad I went in not really knowing what this series was about whatsoever. I just knew people were talking about it, and they were, you got a lot of like Jennifer Coolidge love and Aubrey Plaza love and things like that. So you'll be surprised if you haven't watched The White Lotus like I did and you start the first season, you don't see any Aubrey Plaza there. Because the first season's is a cast is only for that season essentially.
Oh, okay.
Now Jennifer Coolidge does cross over into the second season, but she is the only one, I believe.
Interesting.
Well, and John Grease, who plays a character that's like becomes her husband later, sort of transfers over to the second season. But the first season it's about this hotel that all these rich people go to, and the very first episode of both seasons start off with you knowing that somebody in this world is going to die. Don't know who it is, and I don't know if a term has been coined for this, but I tried to say this on a recent behind the sins thing, and it hasn't come out yet. But who dies it is what who dies it.
Who
It's
dies it?
also a who done it though, because you don't know exactly who's going to be killing whom in the movie, but or in the show. But you just follow these people's lives, and there's like all sorts of like reasons why any one person might kill another person all the way through it. And these rich people, especially certain ones, are really awful people. They're really bad. Like I guess they try in their best way to seem like nice people for the most part, but they're not very, very good people. The first season has Connie Britton, Steve Zahn, has Sydney Sweeney as their daughter. It has Alexandra Daddario is in it. There's and there's just a whole bunch of stuff just going on. There are a lot of like crazy events going on, and by the end of it, yes, someone will die, and it's very it wraps up in I think 7 episodes in each one of them. The first season, you're going to watch the first season and go, why was everybody really talking about this show? Because it's kind of average. If you really want me to be truthful, that first season, even with all that star power that's there, it's kind of average. Jennifer Coolidge, I think, steals that whole season. I think that's the reason why she comes back for season 2, where they set it in Italy, and there's way more intrigue, way more danger, way more things going on in that one that you're like, okay, I can see where this is going. That one has Aubrey Plaza in it, and that one has Theo James, and it has who else is in this one? It's just hard to go through all the whole thing. Oh, F. Murray Abraham, Michael Imperioli is in it. There's all these different families going through their different things, and each one has this sort of like, okay, well, I could see this person killing that person because of this, and I could see this person killing that person because of whatever. And then, it always comes to I felt like the second season was where they really shined. And at the end of the second season, Mike White was talking about his ideas for the third season, and I really want to see that. I think that will be a great thing. Anyway, the White Lotus, if you haven't seen it, very, very short. If you want to get through it all, I think they had 14 episodes between the two seasons. So
it's wild to me that this is from the guy who wrote Orange County.
Yeah, I know. Mike White has had a crazy career, man.
He has,
if you look
man.
at, like, I remember seeing Mike White in this very obscure movie called Chuck and Buck. That was the first time I ever saw him. He wrote that movie, and he's in it with like one of the American Pie directors who's like an actor in that movie. It's like Chris Weitz. I think it's Chris Weitz. And and like and that's a very unusual movie. And then Mike White just starts showing up as a writer for a lot of things. I think he also wrote School of Rock.
I think he did, yeah.
And he's the teacher that's in School of Rock that gets who Jack Black replaces, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, Mike White has a fascinating career. I'd love to see a like deep dive on him someday.
We probably will. He's having more and more success the further he goes. My second small recommend, I just watched Sunday with my wife. It's a 2022 Amazon original film called Catherine Called Birdy, starring Bella Ramsey, who is
I thought that looked familiar.
She's the star of co-star of the Last of Us show on HBO, and she also stole every scene she was in Game of Thrones as a tiny queen who rules over like 60 people, but is a badass. She is actually English, which I didn't know until like 2 weeks ago. And this is based on a book from 1994, and she plays Birdy. She is the only daughter of a lord in basically medieval England. And I will tell you right now, there are not going to be very many story surprises here. If you've seen any movie about a father trying to marry his daughter off and the daughter doesn't want to marry, she would rather be with somebody for love, then you probably will predict some of the beats of this story. But Bella Ramsey is so freaking good. She's so charming. And this character, more than like in Pride and Prejudice, you have an intelligent resistance from Elizabeth, right? From the idea of being married off. But Birdy sabotages every potential suitor that comes her way intentionally. At one point, she's on the table growling and barking like a dog. And unfortunately, that particular suitor is turned on by that behavior. She's the star of the show, as she should be. Lena Dunham made this movie. And Lena Dunham, whatever your opinions on her, personally, she's a good writer. And this is very sharp, well-written, very, very funny. She's playing a 14-year-old like she is in The Last of Us, and she's playing it just fine. But just really, really charmed. Joe Alwyn is in this, Taylor Swift's boyfriend. And then an actor named Andrew Scott plays her father, and I had seen him before.
Andrew Scott's in a lot of stuff. Like,
his Dark Materials and 1917, Fleabag.
Isn't Andrew Scott he's the voice of one of the people on the phone in Drive?
Maybe he is.
Well, I mean, that's not the only. I mean, he's in a lot of things, but like, yeah, that's him. He's the guy who Tom Hardy is talking to and telling him to do the pour and all that. That's who's on the other end of the line of that in Drive, and not Drive.
Lock?
The Lock. Yeah.
Okay. When you said Drive, I was like, I don't remember too many phone calls in that movie. But and I do want to talk about Bella Ramsey because she is gender fluid. But she said in an interview 2 weeks ago, she doesn't give a damn what pronouns you use. And Wikipedia is using she. So that's the reason that I was going with that. And if I see her say that she prefers they, them, I will absolutely do my best to change my language there.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay. I finally got around to seeing Tar, the Kate Blanchett movie.
Oh, nice.
And I I'm going to recommend this movie based on her performance. I think the movie itself can kind of leave you cold. It starts off like very like it starts off very like crackling and like, wow, what kind of movie we're about to watch. This seems like this seems like a very like on the roller coaster type of thing. But I'm gonna recommend it because of Kate Blanchett herself, because to play a character like this, she is a world renowned composer who is about to lead a German orchestra. And there's a lot of firsts involved here, first woman, first all that. But she doesn't really care about stuff like that. She doesn't really care about being the first woman or anything like that. In fact, a lot of her character has to do with whether or not you should uh, consider the identity of a person when you're considering their work as a composer. And there's a full scene here. Now, I don't know how much this will piss off certain people or whatever, but like there is a guy that she's trying to teach. I think this is at a Juilliard class or whatever. And the guy in the Juilliard class is like, I don't respond to some of these composers because this guy was a cis white male who was married and had 13 kids and blah, blah, blah. He talks about all these composers as far as their like who they were and what they were about. And she tries to prove to him that it doesn't matter what this person's like life was like. Does their work, sort of hold up on their own and everything. And she ends up like just devastating this dude in a really asshole manner, by the way. Nobody comes off looking good in this scene or whatever, but as it goes through her sort of the way she is and all that, she's taking command of this German orchestra, and there's a lot of politics involved. She's married to this woman, and they have a kid, and it seems like Lydia may cheat on her quite a bit, but they have some sort of love for each other, and they know, and they want to do what's best for the kid and all that type of thing. But there's a lot of politics involved in this orchestra, even and either perceived politics or real politics or perceived favoritism in certain cases, or real favoritism. And so there's an assistant that she has that wants to have this assistant conducting job. She's doing everything she can. She's basically a Smithers to Tar, and she's up for this assistant conducting thing. And at a crucial moment, Tar doesn't give her that job, tries to try out for other people and stuff. And she constantly pisses people off this way. And it gets to the point where the movie takes a turn where you're like, I don't know if I really, really wanted it to get to this point. Like this is not the arc that I was expecting out of this movie. Has a lot to say about, I guess, cancel culture in today's world or whatever. So I don't know what your personal opinions are on cancel culture or anything like that, but that's what the movie is about.
Sure.
Is about what happens when somebody, even if it's perceived that they are acting inappropriately or whatever, that they can be like, their career might possibly get ruined because of it and like that. But watch the movie not because of any kind of politics that are involved. Watch the movie because Kate Blanchett is fucking amazing in this. It is one of the most dynamic performances you'll ever see. A lot of like little weird quirks that don't like show up constantly in an annoying fashion. Just every once in a while there'll be a quirk, and like, I think a lot of movies, a lot of performances, a lot of times they'll lean into the quirks, and so that so that it'll be like something like you're always remembering that character for. Look at how many times Kate Blanchett just absolutely just somehow nails some. She has what has to be pages of dialogue at some points, and just goes through all this stuff with a bunch of history and names and things like that. And she's got references that like I went completely over my head as far as the music industry is concerned and everything. I had no idea who she was talking about most of the time or what reference she was making, but watch the movie because of Kate Blanchett. It's really good.
All right. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That one's definitely on my radar, so I will try and check it out.
All right. All right. So what is our big recommend today, Jerry?
I'm fine. It's just that you're so big.
It's so huge.
It's a good rule, but this is bigger than rules.
It's bigger on the inside.
Is it? I noticed.
It's a big recommend. He's Master and Commander. The title should have ended there. Far Side of the World. It's a mouthful of a title, and I don't know how much that contributed to its box office mediocrity. But this is a movie about a British naval captain in early 1800s when Napoleon is basically ruling all of Europe except for England. And he is down around Brazil, and his most recent orders are to find this enemy ship called the Acheron and either sink it, burn it, or take it as a prize. On this boat, he's got Paul Bettany. I'm going to say boat and ship interchangeably. Naval people, just get over that. Paul Bettany is his ship's doctor. It's implied that he's had something disgraceful in his past, or that he has taken this post to escape something. He's also a naturalist who loves to observe and document animals and nature and insects. And there's also, of course, a full crew here. And it's fascinating to me how some of the crew they never get lines. You rarely ever see their faces. There's just like this whole level of crew that are there to serve the other crew. And I can tell you right now, I want no part of being on a boat in early 1800s in the ocean. Even if I'm not being shot at or having brain surgery, the entire lifestyle looks miserable to me. There is, in the fog, one guy, a young guy who's on watch, thinks he sees a ship. And so they do the whole thing, and they get everybody up. Captain gets out of bed and comes up to the deck, gets his own spyglass out, and there's so much fog, you can't really see anything. And they begin to realize, oh, this is not a ship. This is just a young guy who made a mistake. And Russell Crowe, who's a good captain, says, you did the right thing. And then he's got this nagging feeling, and he looks back out over the water again with his spyglass and doesn't see a ship, but he does hear and see the orange pops of cannon fire, and they are immediately in battle. And it's the Acheron, the ship he's supposed to be finding. And they don't have any reason why that ship would be there right now. And there's a great scene where Paul Bettany says, maybe he was looking for us. And the battle doesn't go well at all. I'm surprised the ship can even float after this battle. They lose their rudder. They lose 9 men, and dozens others are injured. The Acheron is just a bigger ship, has more guns, and Russell Crowe's ship called the Surprise, when they did fire their cannons in this battle, it didn't make a dent. They weren't able to pierce the hull of the Acheron. They do, however, get away by going into the fog and hiding, essentially. So then they're back on the road again, and surprise, surprise, pun intended, the Acheron shows up out of nowhere behind them and is pursuing them. And Russell Crowe kicks himself and says, that's twice he's done this to me, and I will not let it happen again. And here they just try and outrun him. And they put up every sail they've got on the boat, and Jack, which is Russell Crowe's character, he says he will even hold up our pocket handkerchiefs if we have to for extra wind. And you see the Acheron putting up more sails behind them and trying to catch them. And it's only nightfall that saves them. It turns to night. The Acheron is still behind them because they can see their lanterns, and they're still firing, just not quite in range yet. And Jack comes up with a genius maneuver to fake the back of their boat with a raft and a sail and some lanterns, and they time the turning on and off of the lanterns perfectly. And this kid who set it out there swims back, and then they make a hard turn and they go east. And the Acheron continues through the night following this fake ship. And then there's another great moment where Jack the captain goes, I think we've gone east far enough. Let's go due southwest right now. And just knowing the sea the way Kevin Costner in Waterworld did, he puts him directly behind his enemy, the Acheron. So the Acheron then decides to bolt for the Cape Horn, go around the bottom of South America, and that's apparently notoriously dangerous seas, and it's stormy water, and he pushes and pushes, and his men can barely take it, and the ship is flooding, and they're taking damage. And so finally, he's like, all right, let's just go around the storm. So they go down towards Antarctica, freeze their asses off with some snow, come back up around the storm, and that's when he announces his realization that the Acheron has gone to the Galapagos Islands, and they need to go to the Galapagos Islands. And when they get there, he's going to let his naturalist buddy explore this basically unexplored natural preserve, which will have dozens of species of things that have never even been documented. And I actually really love Paul Bettany's love of nature in this. It really comes across as something truly soulful for him. And of course, they get there, they find survivors from an attack that say the Acheron took off a few days ago. They take on the survivors because they're good people. But the captain changes his mind. We're not going to get on the islands. You can't go see your insects. We have to go after the Acheron because he's obsessed with killing and taking over this other boat and its captain. And in one of the goofiest things that could possibly happen, and it's so goofy it feels real, a crew member is attempting to shoot an albatross that's flying around the boat and inadvertently shoots the doctor. And there's like a Dr. Light on board, like a junior doctor, who says, well, I can probably do this. I gotta go read some books first, though. So they decide to go back to the Galapagos and get on land where it'd be steady, and they have to remove this bullet and fabric fragment that's entered the body of Paul Bettany's character. And then in what I found to be a harrowing scene, he does surgery on himself with a mirror and gets the bullet out. And then he gets to spend a few days recovering, finding these new species and documenting them, putting the lizards in cages. And he's got a little buddy who's had a traumatic injury early on in the movie, who is taken to this naturalist lifestyle. And they go up over the ridge and they see the Acheron on the other side of the Galapagos Islands. And here he abandons his animals and cages and runs as fast as his injury will let him back to the ship to tell the captain, hey, your enemy's on the other side of the island. And there's another really cool scene where the captain notices this stick bug that they managed to bring back to the boat. And Paul Bettany's telling him about it. It camouflages itself to look like a stick so that they won't, predators won't know he's there. And that gives the captain an idea, because they have to get up close to the Acheron if they hope to defeat it. They've got so many freaking guns that the hull is nearly impenetrable. He's had a crewman who remembered seeing that ship being built when he was in America, and basically builds a model of what it looks like and shows that why that ship is so strong and hard to hit with cannonballs and make a difference. So they make themselves look like a whaling ship. They get rid of all of their uniforms. They get rid of all their flags. They put on costumes. He undoes his ponytail for reasons, and his mane is flowing. And they wait for the Acheron to come and get them. And of course, it does. And when they finally get close enough, they unleash all of their cannons right at the mast instead of firing at the hull. And that is ultimately how they take the ship. They win the day. He gives the ship to his first mate as his first command. And they go their separate ways, only for him to realize that a guy he saw on that boat was actually the captain when he thought he was a lowly somebody else. And so the adventure is on again, because that guy's probably going to try and overthrow the first mate and take back the Acheron. And so the movie ends with him going back out into the sea to go save his buddy. I am dying to know what you thought of this movie this time around.
Yeah, so it's just an interesting dynamic here, because the last time I saw this was 20 years ago. It came out, I guess, it's technically it was like 19, because the movie came out in November of 2003. But I watched so many movies back in the day, as you did, on a Thursday night, really late at night. And this is a 2 hour plus movie, and you also got to add trailers to it because that's what you're watching, trailers when you're doing this stuff too. So, so 2.5 hours on a late night after you've had a long day of like working and doing a whole bunch of stuff, and then you may even still have stuff to do after you finish the movie. Um, uh, didn't set well with me. Watching it back then was just I don't know, I think it was tedious to me. Watching it a few days ago, uh I just noticed how many things, and maybe just a function of age too, but I just love all the techniques that are used in this. Getting into the fog, uh you talked about changing putting that little boat out there with the lanterns, and then turning off one and turning on the other to make it look like that was the back of the boat, and you put that one kid in danger, but but I like the how the kid is like, what do you want me to, what are you doing here, what are you asking me to do, and Russell Crowe says, I'm giving you your first command. And so he goes out on this little boat to do this one little task. But the for me, the movie is another like great man versus nature type of thing. I guess you could say it's man versus man, but I think it's more nature than man versus man. um the main reason I say it's man versus nature is that we never really see the enemy captain during this entire time. In fact, it's very Moby Dickish in a way,
Yeah.
where the captain is going after something that seems kind of mythological in scope. Like
Yeah.
we never really see who this Acheron boat is kind of like it's a different kind of boat than they've ever been used to. It's a bigger frigate than they've ever seen, and it's faster, despite its bigger size. So it's got a lot of this kind of like, it's really kind of a beast that's out there. And man versus nature, not just the fact that it's man versus nature, like, oh, we're like a man challenges the tornado, shakes fist at tornado. It's not like that. It's also man's inability to grasp what nature can teach them. And I sat there and Paul Bettany is going through all these like different things about science, and he is a Darwin before Charles Darwin, essentially, is what they're sort of making. I think they're saying here, this story takes place, I think, a year before Darwin is even born. I think the story itself from the book is 7 years prior, because I think the United States is actually the enemy in the books.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Uh, but anyway, Paul Bettany is constantly trying to tell him, like, we need to slow down, and it wouldn't be a big deal if we went to the Galapagos and you let me walk across it and pick me up on the other side. Sometimes you need a break. Sometimes you need to sit back and heal. And that's so many times even as a great captain, he's forgetting that sometimes you need to sit back and lick your wounds a little bit. It bites him in the ass when he doesn't fix that mast.
Yep.
And later on, he tries to go full speed at the ship that is clearly faster than them, and it breaks the mast off.
Yep.
And it nearly drags them down. If it's not for the fact that they cut those ropes at the very end of it,
Right.
they're sunk. So
it's a tragic scene.
Yeah, it really is. I know. There's the one guy who's out there who's the poor bastard who has to be left out to sea. And so, like, Paul Bettany is constantly telling him, looking at nature is not a frivolous thing. It's
Right.
not anything that's it's not what you say it is. You're trying to equate war with you're trying to say war is better than, or is more important than, sitting back and looking at nature. One of the best parts of this movie for me is when the kid, after they get off of the Galapagos the first time, the kid gives him that beetle. And he says, you could have walked across the entire island without having run into it. Later on, when he is walking across the entire island, he discovers that bug.
Yep.
And discovers that ship at the
Yep.
same time.
Yep.
It's one of my favorite parts of that movie completely. Gives me chills thinking about it right now. The how well that was plotted in.
Yeah.
And there is a moment too where Bettany says something to the effect that I've always found that the interest in science and interest in war conflict with each other in some way. I don't remember the exact quote. He's like, they're always diametrically opposed. But what he finds out in this is that when you start to embrace nature, you become a better person. You become better at war. And that's what basically what it ends up showing in this. Now, is that good or bad? I don't know. That's one of those things where like it's not, I don't think the movie is sitting there ready to judge about whether or not learning about nature makes you a better killer or a better, whatever. But by the end of it, it shows that, hey, if you put in some concepts that you learn from nature, you can become much better at war. And that's exactly what these guys are. Both of these captains are so amazing at deception, and that's human nature. And that's why it's a good man versus nature type of movie. So yeah, I was completely out of my element when I watched this the first time. I watched it now. It is a masterpiece. And I forgot that this got nominated for 10 Oscars back in the day.
Yeah.
It made $200 million worldwide, but against $150 million budget, which meant it probably was not profitable at all.
Right.
In fact, probably lost money in the end. But it got 10 nominations. I think it ended up winning 2. Cinematography was one that it won. I'm pretty sure of. Cinematography was maybe was that one that it won? I can't remember. It won 2, but it was in the worst year to possibly be nominated because Lord of the Rings: Return of the King was the one that was dominating the Oscars that year.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, yes, highly enjoyed, and I will be watching this movie again for the foreseeable future. So really liked it.
I'm fascinated by how much detail went into throwaway background dialogue. People that you don't even see who's saying it. So when they are first trading with the Portuguese people, and there's all these pretty girls in the boat, they're all like catcalling out. When they decide to leave, and the captain's like, "All right, let's get moving on." In the background, you hear, "Put that woman down, Slade." And I don't know who Slade is or who said that, but it made me laugh. And then
it's great
when they're approaching the Galapagos. In the back, you see Paul Bettany and then the kids they're talking about this lizard that then goes swimming, and then there's a cormorant that looks flightless. In the background, you hear a guy go, "Turtles on the beach," and somebody else goes, "Them's good vittles."
Yeah.
And I just feel like the movie is packed with that, and it sort of speaks to the compact nature of life on a vessel like that. And a lesser movie just wouldn't even have that dialogue there. But I'm also fascinated with the history of this. Like as you said, the books, the Americans ship is the bad guy.
Yeah.
In real life, the HMS Surprise, the real ship, was at Fort McHenry in 1814 when the Star Spangled Banner was written.
Yeah.
I have been to Fort McHenry. I used to live in Baltimore. I've been to Fort McHenry a bunch of times, and just knowing that the boat in this movie, in this fictional movie, in real life was there, part of the bombs bursting in air. It's really cool to me. The boat they shot on it's a replica of a boat called the Rose. They bought it for $1.5 million. They paid $1.5 million for a prop. Now, granted, you needed it, and they only shot 10 days on the water. The rest of it is on a gimbal, like closer to shore.
Right.
But just the detail, this is considered one of the most historically accurate movies ever made, not just because of the ship but all of the lifestyle stuff, the science, the medicine is so medieval. Like
the language that they use.
The language.
just the commands and everything. They'll go through even the most innocuous of commands, whereas when you start getting into submarine movies, you hear nothing but like right full rudder, and that's
Yeah.
all ahead full, and that's anything that's action oriented. But in Master and Commander, you get all those boring ones too. It's like
Yeah.
really adds a lot of flavor to it.
It really does. Again, I want no part of life on a boat in any, well, even now, but especially in the 1800s. I love, what's the one other thing I wanted to say? Oh, I just love the quote at the end when he tells Paul Bettany to name a shrub after me, something prickly and hard to eradicate.
Yeah,
I just think that's a great line. That's such a great
is a great
character.
line.
He's so complex. He does have seemingly the right motives, but does sort of let obsession creep in Moby Dickishly, to coin my own phrase for the day. I'm so glad that you enjoyed it this time around. I liked
Absolutely.
it as much as ever. And I'm excited to see what the super secret surprise double feature is going to be for today.
Be very, very quiet. Secret? What secret?
Our dirty little secret.
I tell you something I've never told anyone.
All right. So I am looking over in the chat, and they've come up with a lot of excellent ones, especially things that happen on the sea and under the sea. And, Hunt for Red October has been mentioned, and Perfect Storm, and somebody joked Twister, and, I'm sure Crimson Tide somewhere fits into all this. But I decided to be a landlubber on this one. I guarantee you, none of you thought of this double feature when you started coming up with your suggestions. Thinking about a man and his nature, and a relentless pursuit all the way through to the detriment of these characters and everything. I thought of the movie Heat. This is where Al Pacino is chasing Robert De Niro all the way through it, and much to his detriment all the way through it, to the detriment of his marriage, and really any kind of personal relationships. And I think both of them, to a certain extent, have to run into that to be as good as they are at what they do. This is a theme that we've seen in a lot of movies where just the profession gets in the way of the personal life. And Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, how can you get better than that, right? So I felt like Heat was a perfect companion to this. If you watch these two back to back, you may not initially see that connection, but that was something that I thought of when
I like that a ton. Like I had picked Wrath of Khan as my own prediction.
Yeah.
As Jagged in the chat did, and Dave.
Wrath of Khan's a great one.
Only because of that three-dimensional thinking, lose him in the nebula fog.
Right.
Really felt similar. But that Heat is a great call. The one thing that bothers me about Heat is that Val Kilmer's character is just out there in the world fucking up, and he doesn't have any Robert De Niro's to look after him anymore. So even though he gets away, he's going to jail in 6 months.
He'll find a way. Yeah.
No, I think Heat is a great pick. Love that. All right, then. What are we going to watch next week for episode 53?
So next week's homework is a movie that I have small recommended on this here podcast before, and it's time for a deep dive. It's Devil in a Blue Dress, Carl Franklin's movie that introduced me to Don Cheadle for the first time, I believe. But Denzel Washington, obviously, in this, and Jennifer Beals. This is a great little like detective story. Not necessarily. Denzel Washington's not really. I don't think he's a traditional detective in this, but he is hired to find this woman played by Jennifer Beals in the movie. And it's a classic sort of noir film. And so I can't wait to deep dive this one. I feel like this movie doesn't get enough play these days. IMDb is under 7. I don't understand that at all. Maybe next week I'll hear some opinions on the chat that and I don't know, have you ever seen this movie?
I have, but it has been 15, 20 years. I don't remember it at all. I remember liking it. But that's it. It does look like this movie is on Amazon Prime with a regular subscription. and on Tubi with ads.
Yep.
If you don't have Amazon Prime.
Mhm.
I'm excited to revisit this. It's been, like I said, 15, 20 years, and I like Denzel every time I see him. So
This is a classic. Obviously, Denzel's never bad, but this is a classic Denzel performance that I think everybody will enjoy. And the mystery is, well, you know, the noir elements of it, I think, are going to wrap people up and everything. But I don't know. Maybe you guys can tell me why this movie is not above 7. You would think that it would be on the IMDb.
IMDb is such a harsh judge, such a harsh mistress.
It kind of is. So anyway,
right.
there you go.
Well, we got time for some questiones.
Question. I got something to say. I want the truth. I am listening.
Let's dive in. Name a director and a classic animated movie you would like them to make into a live action movie. Example: Quentin Tarantino's Dumbo.
You know, I would like to see Quentin Tarantino remake just about any of these movies.
I agree.
Honestly, I think that would just be fun. But I thought that it would be cool if Alex Garland did a remake of Akira. If you're and you're doing a live action version of that movie. Akira, of course, is you know, untouchable for a lot of people, but if you made it live action, you put somebody who's like really good at this kind of zone like Alex Garland is, I think it would be pretty badass. And what
No, I like it. I like it.
Okay.
I was going to say I would watch Alex
minute.
Garland anything. I really like that guy. I haven't seen Men yet, but
yeah, Men was I don't know. I didn't like Men, but
yeah, not too many people did.
But for the most part, Alex Garland has made me happy. So so I feel like you know, running through all the technological stuff of Akira and all that, I think he would do a great job with that. So that's my answer.
I like it. I need to tell Jagged in the chat to get out of my brain because I also am choosing Disney's Robin Hood with the animals. We've had too many Robin Hood movies. That's just a fact. We had too many Robin Hood movies. But the Disney animated one, there's a mischievous and a playfulness about that almost only the Kevin Costner one even hints at. But I think if you put Edgar Wright on it, who's kind of the master of zany mischief action, that Disney Robin Hood is probably my favorite classic Disney animated movie. I've seen that a zillion times, but I just feel like instead of making a Robin Hood action movie like we keep doing or romance movie, let's make it a wild romp through the forest. Anyway,
running through some of the stuff in chat, Josh says David Fincher's Fantasia. Okay. So I've noticed something about this chat. Sometimes I'm like, oh, that's a joke, and they're like, I wasn't joking. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, that's serious, and no, I was joking. So I'm just going to read these things off. I'm not going to comment on their jokes or not. So Taika Waititi's Robin Hood, and you were talking about how Jagged needs to get out of your head. Dave Ruff says Edgar Wright does Avatar: The Last Airbender. Oh, I wouldn't mind seeing that. JCD says Wes Anderson. I don't care the animated film, just Wes Anderson. Absolutely, he's done 2 good ones. James says the first third of WALL-E would work for Terrence Malick. Absolutely. That's Isaac awesome. Florentine with Dragon Ball. Yep. And Slab says Wes Anderson's Great Mouse Detective. I remember that may have been one of my first movies, one of my first animated movies in theaters. One of them. It was one of the but anyway.
Scorsese's All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Yes. There you go. Martin Scorsese's All Dogs Go to Heaven.
All right. What's a movie that's so good at satire that people confuse it for being genuine? I stole the best answer here. I apologize.
Okay, that's fine. I'm gonna say American Psycho. I do know that it's hard sometimes. there's a lot of movies out there that aren't serious, but they are presented as serious, whatever. I don't know how you might think American Psycho is being straight laced or anything like that, but there are people out there who would look at American Psycho and say, well, that guy is crazy, and they're not thinking that it might be all in his head or that it might be a metaphor for some other nefarious bad deeds that he's doing throughout the movie. But Christian Bale plays that so well all the way through, and um, it has hints of a Tom Cruise or somebody like that all the way through it. Not that Tom Cruise is this person, but the way he acts is very Tom Cruise like in some ways. But American Psycho is one of those that I feel like people take a little bit too seriously sometimes, and then I don't think too many people think this, but I actually went to Google to see if this very question was asked elsewhere. Of course, there's articles about this type of thing, and apparently, this is Spinal Tap is one of those movies. People, from what I understand, I've heard this. This is anecdotal, but I've heard that there were bands who watched This Is Spinal Tap and said they couldn't watch it because it was just too real to what actually happens in real life, like to real bands. So so it hits that close to home that they couldn't laugh at it. But that was another one that came up that was really interesting. Anyway,
the chat is all up in my fucking brain today, and it's pissing me off. But anything Verhoeven did, like RoboCop, spent probably 5 years being considered a badass action movie before anyone raised a finger and said, "Is it maybe making fun of where we are headed as a society?" And now, of course, any film discussion person is going to say RoboCop is a brilliant satire. But it feels like Verhoeven's movies take a decade or more, like Starship Troopers. And I don't want to say smartest guy in the room shit, but when I saw that with Josh in the theater, we saw the trailer, we were excited. We knew exactly what that movie was when we watched it, and we loved it. I had a fucking bug figurine in college. But I feel like 10 years later, everybody was like, Starship Troopers is a brilliant satire. It wasn't just a bad film. The acting might be bad on purpose. Same with Showgirls. I mean, it just feels like he's always laughing at us. And it takes us a long time to realize that he's laughing at us.
Well, and American specifically, because this is exactly what, this is, try to find any reason to go to war, basically, is sort of the movie's theme throughout there. I had an interesting time writing sins for Starship Troopers back in the day, because you have to take everything that happens in that movie as over the top, exaggerated, but still close enough to home where it's like, oh man, I don't know. Is this should I take pot shots at this? I don't know. So yeah, Starship Troopers is definitely one of those. I watched it. Now I was 20 years old when Starship Troopers came out. And when I watched that movie, I was like, God, this is so bad. And it came in the middle of all these other sci-fi movies that were fun sci-fi movies that had come out. Men in Black came out the same summer, all these like stuff like that. And you watch Starship Troopers, and you're like, what is this trying to be? What is this thing thinks it's trying to be? Who are these actors? Oh my God, these people are terrible, blah, blah, blah. And then later on, you're like, oh yeah, I didn't realize that. I didn't put into account that Verhoeven made this movie and that he does this all the time, no matter what. It's always over the top, exaggerated for a reason. So.
All right. Let's do another one and then we'll call it a day.
Cool.
I've seen it suggested that Oscar nominees should be reviewed 5 years after the award to see which wins hold up. If the other noms are more memorable and whether or not your views of the winner have changed, it would be pretty cool to hear your thoughts on the 2018 Oscar nominations 5 years on.
I looked at the winners of the acting categories that year, and I'm pretty okay with who won. I do know that there are people who are constantly shafted though for nominations and whatever. But I thought more love for Hereditary would have been great. Toni Collette especially. More love. I mean, Black Klansman did get nominations, but John David Washington probably should have gotten nominated out of that group. Adam Driver ended up getting nominated, which is fine. He's great in it, but I felt like John David Washington was doing pretty great in there as well. The Hate U Give is a movie that just didn't get any kind of traction, it feels like. In fact, I didn't see that movie until like 2 years after it came out, I think. But The Hate U Give would have been a great one. The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which was basically a Netflix movie, but it had a theatrical run, and it did get some Oscar nominations. Thought could have been another one that could have gotten a little bit more love from the Academy back in 2018. And another group that got nominated for Best Picture, I know which one you want out of this, but out of the whole group that was nominated, I wanted Black Klansman to win. I know there was no chance of it winning, but that's the one that I wanted out of that group that got nominated that year. But anyway, that's my 2 cents
That's
on
good.
2018.
Yeah, I still think Roma is the best picture of 2018 for me, as it was then. But one thing that stood out to me was Bad Times at the El Royale. Specifically, I feel like there were technical awards it could have been nominated for in terms of set design. And then acting, I think Cynthia Erivo and Jeff Bridges, maybe even more people in the movie, but at least those two were just crackling electric. And they got nominated for non-Oscar fringe-related things, but the Oscars showed no love to Bad Times at the El Royale.
Yeah, and it's one of those movies. It's dark, it's comedy, it's whatever. It's never one that gets any love from the Academy, unfortunately, and that's too bad, because then 5 years later, everybody's like, "That movie was great. Why didn't that get more, attention?" Blah blah blah. Martial Arts Film Freak says Kubo and the Two Strings losing to Zootopia. That was that's a really bad miss on the Academy's part, and I'm going to guess that it's because most of the Academy members did not watch Kubo and they saw Zootopia, and Disney put on the full court press, and that's the reason why the Oscars are stupid a lot of times.
I mean, every year they do this like anonymous interview with Oscar voter, and it's always like, "Oh, I've only seen 2 of these movies," and it's just, I mean, these are the people who are making the decision. We shouldn't give any weight to that awards show.
And there's others who say Moana should have won over Zootopia, and Moana should have also beaten La La Land for song. I don't know about that, but that's definitely a good take on the 2018
I do love
Oscars.
I'm not a big fan of that weird ass fucking turtle song, but I'd otherwise adore the music in Moana. I totally understand that We Know the Way song.
I hope it's called Weird Ass Turtle Song.
It's not. I don't remember what it's called, but I didn't like
Obviously not. It's Disney, but it would be great if it was just called Weird Ass Turtle Song. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week. Next week's movie is Devil in a Blue Dress. Hope that you guys enjoy that one as we talk about it next week. But once again, thank you, chat, for coming in and making our show better for sure. You guys are always on point. So we will see you next week.
All right, everybody.
Bye. Be a part of the live show by being a member of the Sin Club at Patreon at patreon.com/cinemasins. Chat with us on the Cinemasins Discord at discord.gg/cinemasins or Cinemasins Twitter at Cinemasins, and email any comments or questions to Recotopia at cinemasins.com. That's RECOTOPIA at cinemasins.com.
Well, the first few minutes of my audio is going to be fun for Jonathan.
Yeah, same here. I've had my audition on for like 10 minutes, and I've just been sitting here like eating and drinking and probably farting and burping and all sorts of other stuff.
So I told you a couple weeks ago about this new lemon lime starry beverage from Pepsi, right? They're replacing Sierra Mist. And I told you that the Zero that I bought tasted like the real thing, and for some reason had 10 calories. So I went to the store and I bought a 12-pack of the Zero Starry in cans. This is a 12-ounce can. And those say 0 calories. Confused, I went back to the store the next day and looked at the bottle of Zero Sugar Starry that I had bought, and it does indeed say 10 calories. So why does the bottle 20-ounce have 10 calories, but the can 12-ounce has 0? Why would adding a few more ounces add 10 calories?
I don't know.
I'm baffled by this.
Unless it's a preservative of some sort that they're putting in for bottles.
And maybe the bottle doesn't preserve as well as the can?
I don't know.
That's weird, though. I need to investigate if this is the case for other beverages because
I do know that they can probably get away with saying 0 if it's like less than 5 or something like that, probably. My guess. And what if it is at like 4.5 calories with the can, and then when they put it in the bottle, it suddenly jumps to something where they need to put that 10 on there. I don't know.
I don't know.
You know there's some fuckery going on there.
Pepsi.com. This is great radio right here, honestly. These websites today, man, they made this for like 9-year-olds.
I know.
As I scroll down, there's a can of Starry that's animating across and bouncing like it's playing Pong on the website, and it's maddening. Also, I told you about this gas station that had not taken down the sign of the previous gas station and was basically free advertising. Literally 5 days after I told you that, they painted over it in blue.
Yeah.
And it makes me think that we're living in a simulation, or the CEO of that gas station company listens to Recotopia and heard me say that and called down the thunder. Are you still enjoying The Last of Us?
I am.
Yeah.
I'm hoping everybody who's watching the stream is enjoying it, watching me play it and everything.
It sure seems like it every time I popped in there.
I don't know how much of a quote unquote character I am when I'm playing these games, like I try to come up with some quips, and every once in a while I'm like, man, that was funny, and then I'll look at the chat and there's like nobody talking about it, and I'm like, oh, okay, or nobody got that reference or something like that, and I'm like, all right, I guess that wasn't funny, or you guys didn't hear it.
Well, are you doing Dennis Miller type deep cut references that nobody gets? Like
not
that
really.
one time when you quoted, what was that movie you quoted on the bonus pod? That the Aaron Brockovich. We had this
Aaron
water brought in special for you.
yeah. Brought that water in special for you. I did this thing last night where I kind of went through Zazu talking about, Simba and Nala or whatever, and like, you are to be married, affianced, you are betrothed, blah blah blah, and nobody said anything about it. I was like, that's the Lion King.
Why did he put it in quotes?
He must have found the quote. He must have found
Maybe he wanted to be remembered for that line, like when they build the Lincoln Memorial for Dicer, we would inscribe this quote on the wall behind you.
Dicer says from the internet. Okay, so we'll just we'll just credit the internet on that one.
What a producer! That's production right there. I'm impressed.
Right. It's become a meme since, but The Office had that thing where Steve Carell has a quote where it was like, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, and it says Wayne Gretzky, and then it says what's the Michael Scott directly underneath that. So so it's quotes, it attributes it to Wayne Gretzky and then puts Michael Scott underneath.
I've told you this story. I don't think I've told it on the podcast, and I'm not going to name names, but I had a friend I went out to the club with one night. And he basically, I was not good with ladies. I didn't like myself. I'm getting a phone call. And so he was like, I'm going to, go home with a girl tonight. You just watch what I do. And I mean, he literally went up to and approached like 30 different women throughout the course of the night. And I saw many of them have disdain for him. And the last woman he approached, as the lights were on and they were shooing everybody out of the bar, they were both drunk, Started making out, and I guess that's success. I don't know. I mean,
in that setting where everybody sort of knows that you're out in the social watering hole and whatever, but like if you were at the mall and you were going to
or a little league game,
yeah.
He was not disrespectful. To any of these women. He would usually just walk up and say, "Hey, how you doing?" and say his name. But yeah, I did not adopt that tactic after that evening.